I honestly can't believe I'm even telling this, but what went down at Costco last month is too wild to keep to myself. My name's David Garrison. I'm 42, a project manager, and about 6 months ago, I moved into Pine Ridge Estates with my 10-year-old son, Ethan. We thought we were trading city chaos for a quiet suburban dream, good schools, friendly neighbors, the works. Instead, we ended up with front row seats to the most unhinged HOA president I've ever met. It all started on what should have been a perfectly boring Saturday Costco run. Since my divorce, it's become a little father-son ritual. Ethan hunts down the free samples, I load up on bulk discounts, and we both enjoy getting out of the house for a few hours. Simple, right? We were in the frozen food aisle when it happened. Ethan had just snagged a sample of those spinach and cheese puffs when a woman barreled past him with her cart so aggressively that he stumbled, sending his little sample cup flying. She didn't apologize. She didn't even glance back. She just bulldozed her way toward the dairy section like she was storming Normandy. That woman, I would later learn, was Patricia Hawthorne, our soon-to-be nemesis. I helped Ethan steady himself, asked if he was okay, and he nodded, more baffled than hurt. That's when the day took a turn into full-on absurdity. Because instead of continuing her shopping, Patricia marched straight into the women's restroom and started yelling. Her voice boomed out of the bathroom like some kind of deranged prophet. This is exactly why property values are dropping. Children running wild in public spaces, snatching samples like feral animals. This is what happens when community standards aren't enforced. I froze, holding Ethan's hand, while a growing crowd of shoppers paused mid-Costco, run to listen to this bathroom manifesto on sample etiquette. A bewildered Costco employee approached me like, "Is this your circus?" I just shrugged. A minute later, Patricia emerged, red-faced and furious, locked eyes with me, and hissed, "You need to control your child." This reflects poorly on Pine Ridge Estates. Then she strutted off, leaving me slack-jawed and Ethan tugging at my sleeve asking, "Dad, what did I do wrong?" I reassured him he hadn't done a thing. Some adults just have bad days. But this wasn't the end. Not even close. 3 days later, I found a notice taped to my front door. An official HOA citation. For failure to maintain appropriate public decorum while representing Pine Ridge Estates. I had to read it 3 times. According to this masterpiece of bureaucracy, Ethan's aggressive sample consumption at Costco had been personally witnessed by the HOA president and counted as a violation of our community standards. The fine? $200. At first, I thought it was a joke. Prank. Because surely, no HOA in America has jurisdiction over free samples at a Costco 5 miles away. When I called the HOA office, I half expected them to laugh it off. But nope, turns out the citation was 100% real. Patricia Hawthorne, our illustrious HOA president, had personally filed a complaint. According to the secretary, Patricia believed that a resident's behavior anywhere in public reflected on Pine Ridge Estate's reputation. And that was just the beginning. The fines started rolling in like clockwork. One for excessive display of casual wear in public spaces because Ethan wore his favorite dinosaur hoodie to the grocery store. Another for inappropriate vehicle loading technique because I put our Costco haul in the trunk instead of the back seat. Apparently, this showed poor planning skills unbefitting a Pine Ridge resident. Each fine escalated, $300, $500, $750. At first, I tried to be reasonable. I sent polite emails, attached screenshots of our bylaws, highlighted the fact that none of these phantom infractions actually existed. Patricia's responses? Rambling manifestos about community excellence and how my resistance to her improvement plan was proof that I was what's wrong with modern neighborhoods. She even started CCing other board members, clearly trying to build a case against me. Then came the bombshell, an emergency HOA meeting. The agenda included a line item called the Garrison situation. Yeah, me. At that point, I knew I needed ammunition. So I started digging. What I found was jaw-dropping. In just 8 months, Patricia had issued more fines than the previous 5 HOA presidents combined. Families had been cited for mismatched pumpkins on Halloween, using the wrong brand of mulch, even letting their kids draw chalk art on their own driveways. But the real kicker, Patricia was funneling HOA funds into her own pocket. I got copies of the financial statements through a public records request, community assessment trips at expensive restaurants, neighborhood planning retreats at luxury spas, and, best of all, monthly $500 Costco purchases labeled as HOA supplies. Not a single one of those supplies ever showed up at community events. Patricia wasn't protecting the neighborhood. She was using our dues for her personal shopping sprees. Other neighbors had their own horror stories. The Johnsons fined for their daughter's driveway chalk art. The Gwynns hit with a $1,000 penalty because their kid's birthday party went 15 minutes past Patricia's self-declared curfew. Most people had just paid up to avoid her wrath. That's when I called in a lawyer friend who specializes in HOA disputes. She confirmed everything. Patricia's actions weren't just unethical, they were flat-out illegal. HOA boards can't invent rules without a vote, can't police residents' behavior outside the community, and they definitely can't use HOA funds for personal luxuries. We had enough evidence for civil and criminal charges. The night of the emergency meeting, the community center was standing room only. The room buzzed with frustration and anticipation. Patricia stood at the podium in a sharp-shouldered power suit that screamed middle management meltdown. She launched into her presentation, complete with a PowerPoint of so-called violations. Photos of neighbors at grocery stores, restaurants, gas stations, faces circled in red like some deranged FBI manhunt. Then she clicked to exhibit a photo of Ethan at Costco, grinning ear to ear as he reached for a sample. The caption read, "Uncontrolled minor, creating public disturbance." That was it. I stood up. Patricia immediately tried to gavel me into silence, but the other board members, reading the room, overruled her. I walked to the front, set my folder of evidence on the table, and pulled up the actual HOA bylaws on the projector. One by one, I dismantled her case. None of her citations were valid. None of her fines enforceable. Then I brought out the big guns, the financial records. Line after line of business expenses that were really steak dinners, spa retreats, and Costco shopping trips. I showed receipts, bank statements, the works. Patricia's face shifted from furious red to pale white to a blotchy shade of purple. She sputtered about context and interpretation, but I kept going. Finally, I dropped the hammer. Security footage from Costco. A sympathetic employee had pulled it for me. There she was, Patricia Hawthorne, shoving my 10-year-old son aside to get to the freezer section, then storming into the bathroom to deliver her unhinged sermon about community standards. The room gasped, and in that moment, I knew Patricia's reign of terror was over. The moment the footage ended, chaos broke out. Several parents stood up, furious, demanding answers. Board members sat frozen, horrified at what they'd just seen. Robert, the treasurer, a sweet old man who always smelled faintly of pipe tobacco, was the first to recover. He stood, cleared his throat, and in a voice that carried through the uproar declared, "I call for Patricia Hawthorne's immediate resignation." The secretary seconded before Patricia could even open her mouth. Of course, Patricia did open her mouth. She launched into a panicked tirade, claiming she was the victim of a smear campaign, that she was being persecuted for maintaining standards. When someone shouted, "You shoved a child," Patricia didn't deny it. She doubled down. "He was taking too many samples," she snapped, eyes blazing. It was a defensive action for the reputation of Pine Ridge Estates. That was it. The room exploded. Parents yelling. Board members pounding the table. Patricia shrieking about jealous neighbors and conspiracy plots. It got so out of hand that someone called the police. When 2 officers arrived, the atmosphere shifted instantly. They reviewed the financial documents I'd uncovered, eyebrows climbing higher with each page. Then they watched the Costco footage. One of them actually muttered, "Wow," before turning to Patricia and informing her that not only was she under investigation for embezzlement, but that shoving a 10-year-old over a spinach puff could very well constitute assault. The HOA board wasted no time. In a unanimous vote, Patricia was stripped of her presidency. Every fine she'd issued was thrown out. And perhaps most satisfying of all, the board formally recommended criminal charges for her misuse of HOA funds. It snowballed quickly from there. The district attorney's office charged her with embezzling roughly $32,000 and with simple assault for the Costco incident. At her trial, the evidence was ironclad. Witnesses lined up to describe her reign of terror. Patricia, of course, showed zero remorse, insisting she was a martyr for property values. The judge wasn't buying it. Clearly exasperated, he sentenced her to 18 months in prison for embezzlement and 6 months for assault, to run concurrently. On top of that, she had to pay back every stolen dollar, plus $50,000 in punitive damages to the HOA. That's when Patricia lost what little composure she had left. She stood up, pointed at the judge, and shouted, "You are single-handedly destroying suburban America." Then she started critiquing the courtroom, the landscaping outside, the fluorescent lighting, even the jury's sloppy business casual attire. The bailiffs eventually had to drag her out as she railed about declining community standards in the judicial system. Her lawyer didn't say a word. He just closed his briefcase, shook his head, and walked out, like a man who just realized he'd been representing a lunatic.